The Australian Financial Review.
According to this director, in order to be bold, you've got to think big.
I've always tried to be a why not person rather than a why person. I mean, the moment anyone says no to me to something, it's just like a flag. And not a negative one, it just excites me. They'll say no, and then my first answer always is, why not?
Welcome to 15 Minutes with the Boss, a podcast about success, failure, and all the lessons learnt along the way. I'm your host, Sally Patton, and my guest today is Brett Sheehy, the Festival Director of Vivid Sydney, an annual event that transforms the city into an open-air gallery of light. Now, Brett, this is your first year as the Director of Vivid, but you've previously been in charge of some of Australia's premier arts events and organisations, including Sydney Festival, Adelaide Festival, Melbourne Festival and Melbourne Theatre Company. Tell me, how different has this job been compared to all the other roles you've had?
Well, working in festival land is quite different from working in theatre land. But coming to Vivid, one of the things that attracted me was all of my other international festivals had been every art form. I mean, opera, classical and contemporary music, dance, theatre, the lot. And the idea of kind of being more anchored in one art form that I wasn't massively familiar with, which is light art, was really exciting. But, I couldn't help myself. So the moment I got here, I started to kind of build other art forms into Vivid's remit. So even though it's a festival, primarily a festival of light, we have three other pillars, which are food, music, and minds. And inside minds, I've added visual art and performance. So finally, I think, it's a kind of multi-art form festival.
Wow, okay, sounds amazing. On that note, we've only got 15 minutes, so I'm going to start right now. What time do you get up in the morning? What happens? Are you a coffee person? Are you a breakfast person?
Okay, I'm a complete creature of habit. On a perfect day, I'm up at 6. I immediately have one coffee. I'll only have one coffee during the day, and I have my morning shake. My morning shake has 2 raw eggs, 1 banana, blueberries, almond milk, 1 tablespoon of fiber, and 2 teaspoons of creatine. I will have that. Then I allow that to settle, which is about half an hour. While it's settling, I'll go and check my emails, see what's coming overnight, and then I'll turn on the television and just channel surf between France 24, Al Jazeera at the moment, obviously with what's happening in the Middle East, the BBC, and Australia's ABC. Then it's straight to gym, an hour ideally. Then I come back, get ready for work, jump on the train, and I'm at work by 9 o'clock.
And why the creatine?
I think it's the case that anyone over the age of 50 should take it. It helps sustain muscle mass because over the age of 50, you start to lose muscle mass quite quickly. And if you have 10 milligrams of creatine every single day, which seems to be safe, you can, if you go to gym and keep, working on your body, you can maintain muscle mass. And it's also supposed to be very good for the brain and keeping brain acuity happening. So that's the creatine.
Now, Brett, was there a pivotal moment in your career that changed the trajectory of what you were doing?
Yeah, look, a new life, really. My family had been involved quite closely with law, so I thought, I'll become a lawyer. And I actually enrolled at University of Queensland. I was there for 8 years in arts law, and I never got a degree. That's how many times I'd have deferred or dropped out, which is, unconscionable, really. So I still have no university degree. But then at the end of that period, I did start my articles with a law firm on the Gold Coast, and it was a 5-year article clerkship. I did 3 years, then I could take no more. And so then I moved to Sydney. It's not as brave as it sounds. My partner at the time preceded me by 1 year, so I moved down here to be with him. Started writing reviews for a little newspaper here, which was called Sydney City Express. While I was doing that, I was seeing a lot of Sydney Theatre Company productions, and I was reviewing Sydney Theatre Company productions. And then a job came up at Sydney Theatre Company for the opening of the Wharf Theatre in 1984, which was to be an usher. And I thought, well, that could be a good way in, so I'll start ushering. I'd never ushered in my life. And I did that for about 3 months, and then I got to know some of the team from Sydney Theatre Company, including the director, Richard Werrett. And he then said, look, we're looking for a really junior role, kind of a gopher for the directors, so go get their coffee, photocopying, etc. I said, great, I'm in. And it went from there. So then I had 3 jobs at Sydney Theatre Company over 10 years, and then I moved into Festival Land. So I guess Richard Werrett, actually saying you may have more in you than ushering will give you a go in the actual company. That was kind of the pivotal moment.
So he saw something in you that you perhaps didn't see in yourself.
Oh, totally. I saw very little in myself. I had no idea what I was going to do with my life. I thought my prospects were pretty terrible because I found it really hard to apply myself. But then once he gave me that job, albeit a junior position, look, I just loved it. I loved being in that environment, and I did work hard. I know that now. I think we were probably doing sometimes 50, 60 hours a week, but none of us cared. And we would do anything, Everyone pitched in, so there was no kind of preciousness about, what your PD is, and you don't step outside it. You just did everything, and it was a joy.
So what do you say to young people now who don't know what to do with their career, like you didn't, who really have no idea what they're good at or no idea what they want to do?
Yeah, look, unfortunately the landscape has changed a lot. I think it is a bit more structured now and less loose, but I think, do be prepared to do anything. All your friends will tell you, oh my God, you're being ripped off and they shouldn't be expecting you to do that. Forget that. Just get inside a company by any means, I think, the very, very, very bottom, and be prepared to work your way up from there. I think that's vital. Networking is really hard. I get that, because my default position is one of considerable shyness. But whatever industry you want to go into, if you can get yourself in a foyer, and if you lock eyes on someone could help your career, if you go up to that person and say, hi, I'm Brett. You don't know me. I really admire what you do. Is there any time in the next 3 months you could give me 10 minutes for a chat? Would you do that? Now, there are very few human beings who can look you in the eye and say, no, you could not have even 10 minutes of my time in the next 3 months. And, in the end, spending 10 minutes with a young person, and it would always extend to more than 10 minutes because they were so damned interesting, it's hugely beneficial to you. I mean, that classic thing with mentor-menteeing, that, the mentee teaches the mentor easily as much as the mentor teaches the mentee.
So it also helps you. Okay, Brett, what is the best piece of career advice you've ever been given?
Look, one thing which always stuck in my mind, because I love politics. I remember as a very, very young boy, I was following RFK's campaign in 1968. And that quote he had about, it sounds a bit arch, some men look at things and say why. I dream of things and say why not. But I do think the why not is really vital. And I've always tried to drive myself in the why not, and to be a why not person rather than a why person.
And what is the main difference between asking those two questions, why versus why not?
Oh, gosh. Why is accepting the status quo. It is no change. It's anti-progressive. It's, keep everything as it is, and that's as it should be. And why not is, why the hell not? But it also leads to, a refusal to accept no in the first instance. The moment anyone says no to me to something, it's just like a flag. And not a negative one, it just excites me. They'll say, no, we can't do this. And then my first answer always is, why not? Tell me every single reason why not. And then I just battle each of those why nots.
Brett, stay where you are. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, you pick the questions. I'll see you soon. Welcome back to 15 Minutes with the Boss. I'm here with Brett Sheehy, the Festival Director of Vivid Sydney. Now, Brett, in front of you is a cardboard box with about 20 random questions inside. For this next section, I will ask you to pick out a question one at a time, which of course you will then be required to answer. Here we go. If you could relive one day in your career, which would it be and why?
Okay, it would be the launch of the first festival I ever directed, which was Sydney Festival in 2002. And there was a lot of cynicism about whether I'd be capable of putting on a festival. I was quite young at the time.
How old were you?
Just turned 40, just. But my predecessor was Leo Schofield. His predecessor had been a guy called Anthony Steele, who's kind of the father of Australian festivals. So I had a lot of people with their arms folded. I just kind of thought, just push through this. I presented my first program and, this sounds a little bit kind of hubristic or vain, but en masse, the whole audience just kind of leapt to their feet and cheered. And Richard Werrett, who had employed me at Sydney Theatre Company, he was there, and I had him in the front row. And he'd told me, even when I applied for the Sydney Festival job, he said, you won't get it, it's not you. They'll need someone much better. And he stood and he had tears streaming down his face.
Did that give you huge confidence, or what impact did that have on you?
Yeah, huge confidence. Maybe even a little bit too much confidence for, a young man with their first festival. I hope I still stayed grounded and decent. But I think, my ego did go through the roof for a little while there. But yeah, I guess that happens.
Actually, that's interesting. So how do you keep your ego in check? Because you may have no one else to do it for you. You may have to just do it yourself.
Yeah.
Is that something that you also think about?
Oh, yeah, but it's really easy now because I've grown more and more insecure as I've got older. I had a lot more confidence when I was 40 and I didn't know any better. Now that I know how everything can turn out, I am much more cautious. And because I'm not a director of plays, and because I'm not essentially an artist myself, I'm much more of a producer, I think that's given me the ability not to look at something and think, how would I have done that? Or how could that be different? Or if I present that, will my peers leap on me, et cetera, et cetera. All I've cared about is the audience. Who is the audience for this? What experience will they have? Which kind of brings me back to, career advice, which is one thing Richard Werrett told me. The only crime in the arts and entertainment is to bore. And if you can avoid that, you'll be fine.
So why do you think you've become more insecure as you become older?
Oh, because it's that cliche, the more you know you don't know. I think that's why. And I protect myself a bit too. I haven't read a review of a production I presented or, a festival or a season that I've done probably since about, maybe 2008. Now, that said, of course, I'm aware of the traction work gets. My teams will tell me if there's anything specific I need to know or respond to, especially in relation to looking after an artist if they've been, very kind of badly criticized. But for myself, I never look at it because, I learned very early, quite early on, that the good stuff gives you about a 5-minute kick. And the bad stuff stays with you and keeps you up for weeks.
Yeah, no, interesting. And I also really appreciate, because of the way that humans are wired, we tend to take bad news so much more to heart than we take the good news.
Yeah, it's so strange.
No, interesting. Okay, have another fish in the box.
Okay.
What's the hardest thing about leadership?
I think everyone agrees the hardest thing to manage is people. Most organizations start with the feeling that, okay, all the knowledge and power is at the top, and then you filter down what you feel people need to know. But there's a thing that I think started in the Navy SEALs in the US, which is called radical transparency. And it is, you begin with every single person in the entire team needs to know everything all the time. Now, obviously that's impossible, but if you start there, I will share with them everything that I feel I can. And if ever there's something I cannot share with them, I'll tell them absolutely point blank, I am really sorry, I cannot share this piece of information with you because of A, B, or C.
And it might be something to do with the finances or...
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think one of the most dangerous phrases in life is, knowledge is power. I mean, of course there's a truth to that. But what I think it does is it encourages people with the knowledge to therefore secure their power base by holding that knowledge. And if knowledge equals power, the moment that knowledge is shared, the power dissipates. And that's what I try to break down.
That's really interesting. And what is the advantage of disseminating power throughout an organisation?
Because then everyone is empowered, and collectively, the entire organisation feels ownership of that thing. And that's the power they feel. This is mine, and Brett has given this to me or to all of us.
Now, Brett, I want to ask you one question that's actually not in the box.
Yes.
Full disclosure. At the moment, we've got these terrible tensions between Israel and the Islamic countries in the Middle East.
Yes.
And a lot of that is playing out in Australia and in the arts world. How do you think about it all, and is it something that keeps you up at night?
It doesn't keep me up at night because I have a very balanced view. I know that 95% or more of the arts community is left of centre. That's just the way it is. It's just the way it always has been. And so the default position of the artistic community tends to be, one which is left of centre. But I think that, balance is really, really important. And I've said in the past that it's a terrible risk to take, that if the world is, politically divided between conservatives and progressives, left and right, whatever you call it, does the arts community say 50% of humanity are of no interest to me? I am only interested in the 50% of humanity who agree with my worldview and who will respond to work which reflects that worldview. And I think it's really, really important for the arts community to take a broader view of the world. I mean, I can give you a really, really simple example. For my Adelaide Festival last year, 2025, we had Walid Ali coming to give a talk in the Adelaide Town Hall about Islamophobia. And I immediately balanced that with Simon Sharma coming to the very same venue the very next night, giving a talk about anti-Semitism. So I think, to be conscious of those things is really, really important. Certainly for all of the state theatre companies and all of the capital city festivals, you're presenting work for that entire city, whether it's, theatre work or whether it's festival work. Of course, everyone's not going to come, but I'd like to believe that everyone can open the Vivid program or an Adelaide Festival program when I was there, or a Melbourne Theatre Company program, and there would be something in that, and they think, that's for me. I would get something out of that. And I think that's our best chance of changing the world. I mean, I still have that really naive belief that, the arts can change the world, but we're not going to change the world, preaching to the converted. We're not going to change the world ignoring half of humanity. We're changing the world by actually going to that other half of humanity and showing them in ways, other kinds of thinking.
So looking at what happened at the Adelaide Writers' Festival,
Yeah.
Randa Abdul Fattah was removed from the program and the event was subsequently axed.
Yes.
Was that the right thing for the festival to have done?
No way. You make your artistic choices and you stick by them. And you put the case as to why, really clearly as to why someone was chosen, but you also go for balance. Now, Randa is an author, separate from whatever her, political views are, and it was a writers' festival, a book festival, to talk about that particular book. And given that, she has political views, obviously, is there another way to also get balance in that program and have a writer who has also written a book but has differing political views and feature that person as well? Still in 2025, when I presented, Simon Sharma and Walid Ali, the war was raging, but I got zero grief. I got no protests. I got no pushback. And I think that was the reason why, because that balance was there. So, yeah, why that balance wasn't considered in putting together of the program, I don't know. That wasn't my job for 26. But once you invite an artist, that is it. I mean, you make the choice at that point, and no artist should ever be cancelled like that. I thought that was a wrong thing to do.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, I take your point. I have one last question, which I ask all our guests,
Yes.
and that is, if you weren't, for some reason, the director of Vivid Sydney, what would you be doing?
Like anything in the world?
Anything in the world.
Okay. Well, it would still be my second choice because I love festivals. The other thing that always interested me was publishing. Being the editor-in-chief of Vanity Fair magazine, even better, being editor-in-chief of The New Yorker. I think David Remnick is the current editor-in-chief there. I love that kind of magazine culture. That's the other thing I've always loved and appreciated in my life. Contemporary writing about issues, very contemporary issues, therefore kind of magazines and so on.
On that note, Brett, thank you so much for allowing us to spend 15 minutes with the boss. It's been really fantastic.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you to everyone for listening. If you like the podcast and you want to hear more, consider sharing the podcast or writing a review, as it helps us to reach more people. And follow us wherever you get your podcasts. At the Financial Review, we investigate the big stories about markets, business and power. For more, go to afr.com and you can subscribe to the Financial Review, the daily habit of successful people, at afr.com/subscribe. This podcast was hosted by me, Sally Patton, produced and edited by Iona Rennie. Head of audio is Alex Gow, and our executive producer is Fiona Buffini. See you next week.
The Australian Financial Review.